CNN political commentator Paul Begala and former press advisor to then House Speaker John Boehner. Maura Gillespie, good to see you guys. Paul, the war remained a lingering issue for Joe Biden, of course, when he was at the top of the ticket. What is this going to mean for the Harris-Walz campaign now?
Not much. I'm sorry, it's a big myth that it's a terrible crisis in Gaza, and my heart breaks. It really does. But politically, you had like 13% in Michigan who voted protest against Joe Biden. By the way, when Barack Obama ran, he had 11% in Michigan vote protest against him, and there wasn't any problems. There wasn't a war in Gaza at the time. So it's actually kind of overblown. And I think the grace and strength that Kamala Harris showed with those protests, you don't want to be mean to him, you don't want to be rude to him, but I thought she handled it just perfectly. She keeps going like this, she can win this thing.
I wanted to ask you more just from a comms perspective. What do you think of how she handled it? Every candidate, every presidential candidate especially, handles hecklers or protesters or whatever. It's just the world we live in today. What do you think of how she handled it?
I mean, I'm not necessarily speaking on behalf of Democrats here, but I think as an American, that was how you have to handle it. If you're trying to put yourself out there to be the leader of the free world, you got to stand firm against this and point out what they're doing isn't helping. If they're there because they believe, they want to support the Democratic ticket, that's not helping by heckling her. And so she handled it in a way that I think is how, if you're a Kamala Harris supporter, you wanted to see her to handle it and redirect the message back to what the goal is here. Is her goal is to beat Donald Trump, and that's not how you get there.
Let's talk about messaging, and let's talk. We know now that Donald Trump says that he is going to be having a press conference at 2 p.m. this afternoon, a wide-ranging, I'm sure he will say, press conference. Part of the message, I'm just going to assume, is going to be, Paul, attacking Tim Walz and his military career. You remember Swift Boat well. Could it land the same in 2024 as it did in 2004?
This will be a great question. This is the first big test because reportedly the same guy who is behind Swift Boats is behind this, right? So he hasn't grown morally. The question is, have the Democrats grown tougher and smarter? This is what you do. You go Jake Gyllenhaal and Roadhouse on him. You hit back so hard. You say, I'm not going to take lectures about Master Sergeant Walz's military service from a man who faked bone spurs to get out of service himself, Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who said our war dead are suckers and losers. Donald Trump, who stood over the grave of a fallen hero at Arlington Cemetery and said to his dad, I don't get it. What was in it for them? Donald Trump, who doesn't want wounded warriors at his events because, and I quote, no one wants to see that. Donald Trump, who said John McCain and other POWs were not heroes. Donald Trump, who praised Adolf Hitler, said Hitler did a lot of good things. Donald Trump, who sucks up to Vladimir Putin and told the whole world he believes Putin over courageous American intelligence. Donald Trump, who attacked a Gold Star family of Captain Humayun Khan of Virginia, who gave his life for our country. So forgive me if I won't take lectures on Master Sergeant Walz's service from a coward and a creep and a crook like Donald Trump. That's what the Democrats ought to say.
And we shall see. Maura, what do you think of this, Maura? Because one aspect of this, me taking a different approach than Paul on this, is if you really want to open up the basket of we can look back at the past, that has not been a good place so far for Donald Trump and for J.D. Vance, going from J.D. Vance and cat ladies, J.D. Vance on hating police, J.D. Vance on calling Donald Trump America's Hitler. The looking back has not been beneficial to them so far. But what do you think of this approach? Because it seems it's very coordinated, it's very targeted, and it does not look like it's going to let up from Republicans.
Right. I don't think it's ever good for veterans to be competing with veterans about their service and questioning each other's service. As a nation, we should be grateful for all of our veteran service because they put their...
Right. There is a third lane. Just appreciate his service and J.D. Vance's service, right?
Absolutely. I do think, though, that what happened in the rally in Philadelphia, where Tim Walz went off the cuff by all accounts by making the couch comment directed at J.D. Vance, he opened himself up then to J.D. Vance wanting to say something back at him and pointing out, and again, I don't necessarily agree with going veteran versus veteran on your service, but I don't think that Tim Walz had thought through it in a way because, today's press conference coming from Donald Trump, a bit rich, as Paul may have pointed out there. But if it comes from J.D. Vance, it's a little bit different, right? Because he is a fellow veteran. He actually served, he's a Marine Corps, like he served overseas in Afghanistan. So it's very different. And I think we all realize that some of the questionable or misleading comments that Governor Walz has made opens him up to voters then thinking, should we be questioning a little bit of his character? What does that say about him? So I'm not saying that it's a tactic that will benefit, because looking backwards has not proven to be effective for Republicans, but also hasn't proven to be effective for Democrats. But again, this is politics, and this is a part of politics that most Americans find beyond frustrating, because both sides don't know where to stop.
This is when it gets nasty and ugly and all
they
the
don't know where
words
to stop.
that,
They go too far.
Right. There is no bottom, is what we have realized.
Unfortunately.
Paul, before we go, I wanted to ask you something I saw in Punchbowl, reporting that some key vulnerable Democrats are not attending the Dem convention. And here's how the playbook is writing about this. The Punchbowl is writing about this, sorry. With the Senate at stake of falling into Republican control and the GOP targeting dozens of at-risk House Democrats, some members are prioritizing their own campaigns over the convention. Sherrod Brown of Ohio, John Tester, Montana, they said they will not be going. Jackie Rosen of Nevada, who will appear with Harrison Walz in Nevada on Saturday, is also skipping the DNC. They also named vulnerable House Dems that have said they are not attending. And it is true that not all politicians of a certain party go to every convention. We saw that on the Republican side as well. What does this reflect something, though?
No, it just happens every convention. This will be, Kate, because I'm an old man, my 10th Democratic convention. And there's always, and by the way, I've been to at least 5 Republicans. In each party, there are vulnerable members who don't want to seem too partisan. I think it's very smart. I mean, John Tester is just not a very partisan Democrat. He would not, I think, do well at a very partisan event like a convention. So I think it's smart. You saw the same thing on the Republican side. It happens at every convention because, frankly, they're smart. It's a very partisan event. It's great for people like me. But if you're not a very partisan politician, you probably shouldn't be at such a partisan event.
Partisan, partisan, partisan. It's good to see you, Paul. Thank you. Maura, it's great to see you as well. Thanks, guys.